Hey, I'm James from J Technology, and today we are at the PRS factory in Stevensville, Maryland. Today we have a special guest, Doug Sewell, who actually started manufacturing amplifiers for guitars. He started with Sewell amplifiers,
Correct.
and now he has collaborated with Paul Reed Smith in his new line of amplifiers. Doug, can you give us a little background, how you started? What I read was your background is actually in architecture,
Right.
not electronics. So, can you tell us how that started?
Okay, absolutely. Welcome to Ampland, guys. This is where all the goodness happens with PRS electronics and amps and tubes. I was an architect, like you mentioned, with an architectural firm in Texas, in Dallas. We had a firm for 15 years rolling, and as with any business, it can be kind of frustrating. You need an outlet. I love music. I love old amps. I collected amps. I started, designing cabinets initially for amps using AutoCAD that I would use, millwork drawing capabilities from architecture. I would design cabinets, take old Alamo amps out of, I'd buy for little or nothing with torn up, cabinets, and I would replace the cabinets with some cool stuff. And those things kind of got real easy to sell. Taking to music stores and sell them for a foot pedal or whatever, and it was really cool. Then I got an old Fender Tweed, and I turned it on, and for 10 seconds I understood what everybody loved about those things, until the capacitors burned up because they were old and dried out. So that kind of got me down to Radio Shack to buy a soldering iron, and started fixing, amps at that point. That old Pro was one that I loved so much that I designed an amplifier kind of loosely based on Pro circuits, several Pro circuits, called the Wampus Cat, which was my high school mascot in Texas. And for 3-4 years, I did Wampus Cat amps, Sewell Wampus Cat amps, and did them in the evenings and weekends. And one thing led to another. The country cowboy, rock cowboy bands down there in Texas kind of discovered me. A couple of times they were seen on Austin City Limits and the music show, and then just kind of blew up. So, it was at that point I was doing nothing but architecture in the day, and all night long I was wiring amps. And Mr. Smith, Paul Reed Smith, and I bumped heads together at a Dallas Vintage Guitar Show. Okay. And Paul came over and plugged in, and he kind of got a little excited. And before it was over with, he's pulling his checkbook out and buying everything I had available in my booth. And he used it that night for his show, and he sounded fantastic. He was hugging me, and I didn't know him, and that kind of stuff. It was really fantastic. And he swept me off my feet, basically, as professionally, I guess you would call it. One thing led to another, and Mr. Paul, he made gracious offers for me to be able to shut my architectural firm down in Texas and move here to Maryland.
Wow, that's great.
And it's living a dream. That's a cliche now, but it really is. Every morning I come to work, I'm like, what am I doing here? It's just like I feel guilty nearly coming to work. It's fantastic.
Well, it's something you're passionate about and what you love.
I loved architecture. I am passionate. I wouldn't stay up all night without really hating it at architecture, but we had to do it a lot. But I will stay up all night working on an amp. It's my passion. It's my passion. So.
Wow, that's great. And maybe can you give us maybe a rundown of like the process of developing?
How we do this?
Yes.
How we do it? Absolutely. I am officially the senior amp designer. So I did have a lot of R&D work back in Texas that we pulled forward, but the PRS family here of amps has allowed me to expand my capabilities as an amp designer just infinitely. Paul's input, all the artists' input. I mean, I'm working with Allman Brothers. I'm working with the Doobie Brothers. I'm working with all of the David Grissom. All these guys, all these heroes of mine that are giving me input from such a professional level. plus Paul and his drive and his vision, plus the ability to try out a $200 transformer, or develop one, or develop a transformer, a custom transformer set off the shelf, or to use a $35 capacitor. It's one of those things that I've just been expanded and released, kind of, to allow me to do the best of my abilities as far as an amp. The process, I have an associate, Brandon Chang, that he takes. It's just very similar to my architecture profession. He'll take my rough ideas. Brandon crystallizes them. He puts them in formats where we can, by chassis, circuit boards, the graphics, we work together in that fashion. He's a godsend to me in the sense of we get so much done. He works 4 simultaneous softwares. We developed the amps based on input from marketing and Paul, and input from that. We'll just say we take a design that we want to do. We go through the process where Paul and I voice these things, and we get an input from everybody. We get input from artists. We will take these things and we'll try to get all the rough edges, sanded off of them, and then when we decide to go to production, we turn it over. We have purchasing departments. We have all kinds of processes that Brandon again takes care of, with bills of materials and all the processing to get all the parts and things. This area is mine right here. This is just R&D stuff. These parts and things aren't on the books, in other words. The whole process of getting an amp in production is a major. We've got certifications that we do for UL type approvals for overseas sales. We've got all of these interfaces, and we have a great staff where we're really, it took us a while because this is new, to all of us. It took us a while, and we're really getting it down, and it's a well-oiled machine. We treat this area just like my garage nearly, as far as the way we build amps. Every one of them we build with the same kind of fashion and love that I did in the garage. We've got 3 final assembly people over in this area. We've got a pre-assembly person here who bolts transformers on and pots and things, and it's done in exact fashion. I'm here all the time. We have questions, with anything. Is this wire need to be here? We're getting a little squill. Then we have a whole secondary department after they get the amps running that tests these things. We pound them. We pile old tubes up that don't function correctly. We have stacks and stacks of tubes that we go through. We burn them in. We put a sine wave into the amps. We have a rack back there. We have fans that blow on them, and we'll sit there and burn them for hours and hours just to make sure that we minimize any problem out in the field that UPS or bless their hearts or whatever. You just can't help it sometimes, but get some shocks and jolts whenever the amps are delivered. And we don't want that tube to give away because it looks bad on us, even though it was something that we had no control over or whatever. We want to make these things as trouble-free as possible. So we're doing everything imaginable to try to minimize that. We have meetings every week about problems that may have happened with an amp, and that we study, okay, what can we do going forward to keep that problem from happening. Little things like our little jewel lights would go out if you shocked it too hard, so we bought different jewel lights, or we changed over to an LED, instead of that. So those are the types of things that we do here, and we really, really care about every one of them.
Okay, so basically everything's done here in the beginning.
Correct.
And could we kind of check
Absolutely.
it out? Like what's the next step?
Let's roll through. This
Sounds
is
good.
the R&D.
Okay.
Transformers, Bones Path. These are old R&D amps that I've done. I'll take the processes of where I literally hand cobble the circuit boards. This was the first Sweet 16 that we did, and it's just here's how that ends up. Here's a chassis that we just had loosely done, and that was the first Sweet 16, and that was a model, just for an example. So after it goes to production, we'll follow this way. This is pre-assembly, where we take chassis, raw chassis. Here's our new David Grissom model chassis, and we will have all the transformers available. We don't stock up on too much because they don't like a huge amount of inventory here. Right. So we'll do all of the hardware to bolt these things on. You know, cathode resistors, you know, fuse holders, all the sockets and everything are done here, and that's brutal kind of work when you're doing, you know, 20 of them a day. That's so. This is really where the rubber meets the road with the kind of the toil and pain of getting these things together. And we have face plates, you know. There's a Paul's amp, circuit boards, all that kind of good stuff. And after it's put here, we go over to, we could Brandon. I mentioned Brandon. He processes our drawings, our layout diagrams, and everything. He literally sends them wireless to these iPads that we use to wire our amps with, and they're literally updated real time, so nobody's fiddling with the latest. This is the official version, you know, and they'll sit there, and if they can't remember what's going on, which a lot of times they can build these things from memory now because they've done so many, but they use these for reference. They'll get.
Are you using a specific software for
that particular is just, they come in PDF form. Well, I use AutoCAD, which is very inappropriate for amp design, but that's what I use personally for transmitting to Brandon. He takes AutoCAD, puts it in SolidWorks, and our ProCAD, which is our circuit board material, and then Adobe for the graphics and things. So he balances all that, but basically he provides just a PDF thing that they can zoom around, color-coded wires, that type of thing. And here are all their parts for final assembly. You know, circuit boards, all hand stuff. See, these guys haven't even trimmed these off yet. There's a 2-channel, which I very architectural in thinking to keep the, you know, to keep the kind of the factor of the keep it simple kind of concept, you know. Keep it all lined up so I can conceive of these things when I'm designing them. Got resistors. We'll use carbon comps in some places. We'll use carbon films in some cases. We'll have $35 Jensen paper and capacitors in certain places. That's a lot of money right there. Yeah, but Paul doesn't care. I mean, you know, if it's going to sound better, you know, we use Sozo capacitors in certain spots. Those are handmade, beautiful vintage sounding capacitors, metal oxides, etc. You know, all these parts here they use for assemblies. They have some assemblies started here on 2 channels. There we are, all hand stuffed. And then after we get an amp running, these guys are final assembly guys, so they're all allowed to get these things running. Here's a 2-channel custom 50, finished. They don't do too many a day, you know. It's all done with love and care.
And everything's all handmade.
Everything is handmade, yeah. We have no automation, you know, it's just we don't put that many amps out to afford, you know, heavy automation, you know. These are the new David Grissom amps. That's the 30 and that's the 50. And these are just super boutique-y in nature where everything is just like really constructed mechanically, you know, rather than electronically so much. Then once we get them built, we rack them up. We come in to our warning electrical hazard area. We have our cake, and then we come in and burn them in racks here. We have golden samples that Paul has personally approved, every one of them. We compare the amp that has just been built with the golden sample, A-B them, make sure there's no issues tonally that we can't catch because of the slight variations and things. Once they get approved from golden samples, then we put them through the rigors of heavy duty, you know, shock testing. Of course, we use these types of things. We sit there and we'll literally tap the tube. If we hear we know it's going out. We'll keep going.
So you can actually hear it.
and that's where we put them.
You'll actually hear
We'll literally, we have it here. We put them on scopes. We make sure both sides are working. We make sure all the tubes are running correctly, put them on scopes, and load them down, test them here with noise. We'll sit there and tap them, and you can hear them when they're about to go. If they pass all this, then we have a sign-off sheet where we go through and make sure every element of an amp works. Make sure that the mid-range works all the way. Everything, full suite. We try all the different parts. So sometimes if you have a wire that's analog, so analog like this, sometimes some wires might not want to be adjacent to each other in certain ways. Sometimes it only causes a squeal in certain positions, like, or all the way up or whatever. We make sure all positions will not cause any kind of issues. Match tubes, match preamp tubes. After all that, and after all that's passed, there's some reference amps. We've got a few things laying around like that. We come out to actually put them in test guitars, a couple of non-PRS guitars, just to make sure that lesser quality guitars sound good too. We rack them up here, and this is where the guys will take it and start casing. All the cabinetry available. We made a decision about a year and a half ago to put lovely wood in the front. Here's an example. We have every color available nearly that they make guitars out of. You can get match colors. We have standard colors that would come, without any kind of optional situation of charcoal colors with black. But we have, as you can see, a myriad of, there's paisley that we're so famous for, and blonde, all these different colors. These are all David Grissom amps. That's the process. We take them back in, one last check, make sure reverb's working, everything, make sure there are no rattles, that type of process. And then they take it down to the end down there, they check them out, and they take them down to shipping.
Wow, that's great. It's a long process, but
yeah, that's it.
Couple more questions.
Sure.
How many different lines are there for your power amps?
Models.
Or models?
We have three basic, or we had, now we've combined a couple, three basic models. We had the overseas versions that we've designed that come in, the SE amps, and then we have what we call core amps. And those would include like the 2 channels, the Sweet 16, the 30. We have then we have CAD amps, which are custom amplifier design department, which is kind of our high-end where we throw in the real high-dollar capacitors and output transformers and that type of thing. And then we have Dallas, we have HXDA, we have Paul's amp, and we have Blister Tone, and we have some other models that kind of aren't even on the price sheet, but we, people that conceive of an amp through the CAD amp shop, we get together, we said, yeah, you can do that. No, we can't. And I'm already getting people asking for options on the David Grissom's amp. We just released it, yesterday. But yeah, they're saying, can I get foot switchable? Can I get a check sleep on it? So that's all the CAD department stuff.
And everything is all tube?
It's all tube. Again, it's one of those things that that's what I know. That's what Paul signed me on for. Solid state is great. Actually, they had some solid state PRS amps, 15 so years ago that sound great. But we're doing the tube, out of the garage concept kind of things here with all the love that we can put into them.
Well, with the tube, you get that warm, nice sound from it.
That's right. They distort differently. They have a certain different harmonic structure, and it's just pure mechanical inside the tube, how that works, that they distort where the harmonics that are generated from the distortion are pleasing to the ear.
Doug, I want to say thank you. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure seeing you guys and explaining our somewhat lesser known part of PRS guitars. We're charging hard here with amps. We're trying so hard. We come in with some big shoes to fill with these guitars. They have a big head start on us, but we're trying to close on them, and we're real proud of what we're doing here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.